Let's talk about history in the making in Georgia right now. That is where Democratic Senate candidate Raphael Warnock has become the first black senator in the state's history.
We prove that with hope, hard work, and the people by our side, anything is possible.
Warnock's victory over the Republican incumbent Kelly Loeffler brings the Democrats within one seat now of seizing control of the Senate, the big prize. Democratic candidate Jon Ossoff has a razor-thin lead in the race for the other seat. Of course, we're keeping a close eye on those votes as well. Let's bring in Michael Fauntroy. He's an associate political science professor at Howard University. Joins us from D.C., where all the action will be any time now. Right, Professor?
Yeah, listen, it's been a long time since there's been this much action in D.C. from one end of Pennsylvania Avenue to the other. You know, between the protests, the counting of the Electoral College votes, this Georgia election bombshell, if you will. It's a really big day here in D.C.
All right, Professor, let's start with the bombshell news then. Let's go right to Georgia, these runoff races. First and foremost, sir, your reaction to Reverend Warnock's win.
Well, I have to tell you, it has been an amazing thing to watch. Reverend Warnock and perhaps even with Jon Ossoff were both running with a tailwind, but were running uphill. Georgia's still Georgia, and
Right.
what we saw yesterday is the result of some tremendous groundwork, registering people who had been disaffected and not participating, and new voters. Georgia is one of the states here in America in which there's been an increase in population. People are moving to Georgia as opposed to from Georgia. And that demographic change has made Georgia much more competitive. And we're seeing the results of that today.
It really is an outstanding story, right? We like to talk about red states, which traditionally that's what Georgia's been. Certainly not a blue state, but we'll take a lot of folks now will take the color purple. No pun
Right.
intended, referencing Oprah there, but we'll take the color purple, right? Because you've
Yeah.
seen for so long the fact that, like you said, it's been such a Republican stronghold. I brought it up with a political analyst just the other day, and I said, look, there seems to be a very good chance that with the Black community moving fast and foremost out of the inner city areas into these upwardly mobile suburbs, you are going to see that shift sooner rather than later. I believe I was refuted, but there you go. It certainly seems to have made the difference.
Well, that's a really big part of it. And that speaks to a larger regional issue in the American South, whether it's Virginia, whether it's North Carolina and the Charlotte metropolitan area, whether it's Atlanta and the Georgia and the Atlanta metropolitan area. The communities around the country that are growing, particularly in the Sun Belt, that have large, particularly college-educated communities, are ripe for Democrats. And so if you can get enough of those voters registered and engaged, you have a chance to win. And we're seeing the result of that right now in Georgia.
And we're going to see likely, we're still watching the Ossoff-Perdue race, but we're going to see how this really plays out for the Biden-Harris presidency, right? Because for the past 4 years, it's really just been Trump's show. With respect to control of the Senate. So this is going to be the first time in a very long time that the Democrats will have control of the Senate, if in fact that's how this transpires, which seems to be going that way. But of course, we don't have the official count as yet. Right. Your thoughts, and I ask you this question, keeping in mind that it is very critical to work, sir, with Wall Street. And Wall Street traditionally does not like a Democrat-controlled Senate. Could it be different this time around, though?
Well, I think a couple points. One, I think the Ossoff victory is just a matter of time before it's announced. The truth of the matter is the overwhelming majority of votes have been counted, but what's left to be counted are coming from traditionally Democratic areas. So I just think it's just a matter of time before that's done. Now, Wall Street, during the latter Trump years, has been moving more closely to a bipartisan approach to American government. And so I think that without regard to whether Ossoff wins or not, Wall Street is going to position itself in a way that allows it to work with the Biden administration. And everyone should be careful to not oversell the results of this. A 50-50 Senate with Vice President Kamala Harris breaking the tie is still very closely contested, and a vote here or there could impact the way public policy is made. So those Democrats who are excited about a Democratic majority in the Senate should also be tempered in understanding that that doesn't necessarily mean you can do anything you want to do.
That's an interesting analysis because I just read a survey where top CEOs out of the US are actually saying they're looking squarely at US President Donald Trump, which is going to lead into my next question quite beautifully. Please get off of it now. The election's over and done with. Let's move on. So his traditional supporters now are even starting to pull away because they don't want to see uncertainty, whether it's in D.C. or on Wall Street or on Bay Street. And to that point,
Right.
sir, Trump expected to address his supporters, a rally in D.C. Your thoughts?
I'm actually pretty worried about this. There's a confluence of events that has happened since the election that leads to today. And I'm not going to be surprised if President Trump doesn't just sort of push a rhetorical detonate button and really move his supporters, the most aggressive and most sort of hard right of those, towards some sort of violent reaction. And that would be discouraging and disappointing, but it wouldn't be a surprise because President Trump only seems to care about himself.
All right. Well, we'll see how all this pans out. Rather, we've been reporting also that Kelly Loeffler, who was, she thought she'd be the incumbent senator in Georgia. She apparently will be in D.C. as well, contesting the results. Your final thoughts on that? Quick thoughts.
Yeah, so thank you for mentioning her because
You
both
bet.
she and David Perdue bear a lot of responsibility here. They were terrible candidates, and while I understand everybody wants to jump on President Trump and he deserves the lion's share of criticism here, they are terrible candidates, and she in particular is demonstrated a fealty to President Trump that I think is very unbecoming.
Yeah, and she had a lot of I think both of them, from what I understand, there's some insider trading allegations that surfaced as
Yes.
well, and just big questions, right, about how that would play out in Georgia. Tight race, though. Very, very tight race. And to your point, it looks like those grassroots operations really pulled through. Michael Fauntroy, Associate Professor of Political Science at Howard University, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.